Everybody, my name is Esmok and I'm the sales trainer here at ENS Security, and today we're going to be talking about a very unique camera that we've brought in. This camera is actually a 5 megapixel Vandal Dome that has an HDMI port off the back to locally stream the camera directly to a monitor. It's very unique and I'm excited to talk about it here.
Listen, am I dreaming?
Now, I quickly want to mention with this camera, since it has that HDMI port, it is kind of a camera that's used in specialty situations. For example, the situation you guys see this camera in probably on a regular basis is when you guys go into like a grocery store or a liquor store and you look straight up and there's a monitor with a camera underneath it pointing straight at you telling you you're being recorded. Yes, there is a way to run that with a normal camera by having a NVR that has multiple independent outputs, running cable very far distance, running HDMI cable from the recorder all the way to the monitor. This solution reduces all of that, and we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics why later on, but let's dive into the key specs with this camera. First thing mentioning that it is a Vandal Dome camera with 5 megapixel resolution and a 2.8 millimeter lens. It is NDAA compliant, so you can install this camera absolutely anywhere if you wanted to. It does have an IR distance of 65 feet, and it does support face detection through the web browser. The web browser for this camera is actually a separate web browser meant specifically for this type of camera, so that is available for you as well. And it is OnViv compliant, so you can actually stream this camera directly into the monitor to view the footage live, or you can stream this into the recorder, or both, so it's up to you. Now, I do want to mention a little bit about the ports on this camera because these are less common ports that you see. First thing mentioning the common ones though is going to be your standard PoE port and your standard 12 volt DC female pigtail. These are standard on pretty much every IP camera. Also, you do have an audio out and an audio in port, and you do have alarm in and alarm out ports as well. And like I said earlier, you do have a actually separate cable completely coming off the camera that is an HDMI port. Now, this is where you're going to be basically just plugging HDMI cable directly into a monitor. Now, this camera can be used in two type of situations or two type of ways. The first way being that this camera can be used as a standalone unit, which just basically means not streaming back into an NVR. The camera can display live view directly onto a monitor. However, the footage will not actually be recorded. You can use a TF card, but it only saves snapshots when alerts are triggered through the web browser, and it will not record 24/7. This can be actually very convenient for customers who only want to alert incoming customers that they're being recorded within the building somewhere with another camera system, especially if they already have a full system being installed into that building. So this could just be basically a little add-on to that situation. The second method being is streaming the camera back into the NVR and using the HDMI port to display live view of the camera. So for example, the HDMI port directly going into a monitor displaying live view, and then connecting the PoE port back into the NVR to actually physically record that footage because it is OnViv compliant. This is ultimately the best method because not only are you showcasing incoming guests that they're being recorded, but you actually are able to store the footage from the camera into the recorder. And you're able to view the camera from the recorder as well and the phone app that the equipment's using. So two types of ways. Depending on the installation, you can really go either way. I do recommend the second method just because you get that recorded 24/7 footage. Now you're probably wondering why you would actually use this camera instead of a NVR that has multiple independent outputs. Well, I actually have a few different reasons why. So the first one is the ease of installation. Let's look at that example I gave you earlier where you walk into a building and you see a monitor looking directly at you with a camera right below it, recording you and just basically saying, hey, you're on camera, right? Letting the incoming customers know. Well, instead of having to run from the monitor an HDMI cable 50 feet to an NVR, running a PoE cable or IP cable directly back to the camera and doing all this extra work, you just have a camera that is legit 3 feet away from the monitor connect directly in through HDMI. And you can stream that live view. And if you wanted to take an extra mile, you can still run that PoE cable back and get that recording done for 24/7. So it makes your life a little bit easier in installation and really saves you time. The second reason why is if you're using a recorder with multiple independent outputs, you can actually now use those ports for installing a monitor in different areas that are better for the operator to view, and not just using the HDMI port to display one camera at the entrance. Currently, what most people do when installing a camera at the front of a building where that monitor and camera are is, they're using an independent output off of, let's say, a 5 series diamond line recorder where it has 2 independent outputs. Now you're using that independent output just for one camera. Instead, with this camera, you can actually use those 2 independent outputs for one, let's say, to be the main monitoring, monitor that is going to be for the operations side, and maybe the other independent output can stream into a monitor that is for the owner of the facility or for a security, division of that facility, whatever it might be. Those 2 independent outputs are now freed up for better viewing experiences for your customers. And on top of that, it makes, like I said earlier, that ease of installation with it just being 6 feet away, running this HDMI cord, and not taking up that extra HDMI independent display on the back of a recorder. And lastly, the third reason why is the cost savings of buying this camera instead of upgrading to a NVR that has multiple independent outputs. And also saving costs on additional supplies. I mean, some people, when they're running those long HDMI runs, they have to buy HDMI extenders or even an HDMI fiber cable, and all those things can add up in expenses. This one, you really only need, let's say, a 3 to 6 foot HDMI cable to run a monitor that's very close to one another. And you also save labor time on installation. And time is money, ultimately reducing your costs and time by picking up this one camera for any installation that you're trying to have a monitor and a camera right next to each other. Now, where can this camera be installed? I mean, it can be installed a lot of different places. The first thing I want to mention on it is it can really be installed anywhere. If you're trying to get live view on a monitor, if you're okay with getting just snapshot recording, you can do all that stuff. But the best installation locations, in my opinion, are liquor stores, grocery stores, retail stores, or any type of store where people are coming in and out of every day. I can't think of a liquor store, grocery store, or retail store that I haven't gone in, and pretty much as soon as I look up, I see that monitor, I see that camera pointing at me, letting me know I'm on camera. Okay, in the past, it's been a lot more difficult to run these installations, make it a little bit harder for everybody running with independent outputs, doing HDMI splitters to split off HDMI signals, all these different things. With this camera, it really reduces the time it takes. And with these stores, you see these all the time, and guess what? It's a great opportunity and upsell for your customers to be able to get this camera picked up. So just to wrap this video up, this camera is a very unique camera, and we're excited to have it in because it's something new that we are offering to our customers and something that's going to save you guys so much time on installation. So to get this camera picked up, make sure to go ahead and give your ENS sales rep a call.